Welcome to this episode of How'd You Like That Movie? Today we're talking to Canadian icon Sook-Yin Lee about her feature film, Paying For It, which is out in theaters now. After this episode, check out our review episode of the movie.
So I guess honestly, so first off, obviously, both Scott and I are we're in our 40s, so we grew up watching you on Much Music. So thank you so much for letting us have even this little bit of your time.
Oh my gosh.
Really, so just what do you want our audience to know about your film? We loved it, by the way. We've already done that portion of our show. We just we really enjoyed your film. So what would you like our audience to know about your film?
Good God. I don't know. Well, I guess my most main thing is I want the audience to know that it's a really important film to see at this particular time in what's going on in society. It's pretty turbulent and we're jumping into a lot of different things. I mean, we've gone through a really crazy stretch from the pandemic and lockdown to just, entering into this time in history has brought forth so many different kinds of difficulties. I don't know if you guys feel that way.
Yeah, everything.
It's topsy-turvy.
Well, and we're recording a day before Canada is going to get 25% tariffs. I you can't even keep up with the just
you
collapse of everything.
With the wild shit, the wild ride it is. And everything's spun and and it's a lot of intensity.
It's funny you bring that up because one of the things I noticed when I was watching your film is you managed to recreate that Toronto vibe before Toronto was whatever Toronto is right now, but regular people lived in could afford to rent in normal houses, and
yes,
there was this kind of I don't know if it was 100% working class, but just more real. Well, and now it's just rich and everybody's poor.
My DP Gail Yee walked into my house where we shot, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's amazing people can still live like this." And it's so I guess my message is it's a volatile time. We're all hanging on. And this film is like a warm embrace. It's a warm embrace that doesn't kind of avoid some difficult stuff, but it does so with a caring and open heart. And I think that's what we need.
Well, and I also found your film very, sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No problem.
And when we talked about this on the show, I said, this film is very endearing. I felt not calm, but it's love. It's an entire film that feels it is about love, but it also feels very loving in a way that and I agree with you that we kind of need right now.
I mean, we're talking from the ground up. We talk about mise en scène, right? Everything in the frame counts. And when I say everything that you do in the process of making a movie counts, and you can feel the reverberations and resonances on the screen. And I'm telling you, a whole community came together to help make this movie. I live in Kensington Market, and stores, galleries, my friends' spaces, my friends' places that are 90s era or even earlier era. They let me shoot in their places. Sneaky D's, my boss at Much Music, my former boss, Moses Neimer, he's like, okay, you can use my TV station if you come in on the weekend. A lot of the bands that I reached out who were seminal in my time at Much Music, because I was the person who shared indie music, indie Canadian music. I reached out to Thrush Hermit, Ghetto Concept, so many great bands, Cub, Gob, who just filled the freaking stadium with Sum 41. It's interesting to see Thomas Thacker. I knew him growing up in Vancouver. And, my friend Nikolai Michalov, his cinematographer, is like, Sook-Yin, you've got to get Gob in your movie. I used to love skating to them. Last night, Nick, sends me a photo from the stadium, the Scotiabank Stadium, and there's Gob on stage. And I'm like, yeah. So there's this kind of like communities of musicians, community of literally neighbors and friends. And I feel like that's what, I'm reading about the tariff things and like their preemptive measures, and they're going to stop this or toe to toe. Like there's all these sort of different things, different possible answers to this. We're going to smack them down $1 to $1, or this or that. We're going to, and I say we gotta work together as a community more. People have been really alienated from each other. You can't even talk to your neighbor. I live in a place that, thank God, like when I grew up in Vancouver, I grew up in Strathcona, which is part of Chinatown. And that was a place of a lot of artists, a lot of immigrants, and we all took care of each other. And that was like when there was a lot of heroin starting to go around too. And so there were needles on the ground. So like neighbors would pick up needles, and support their fellow neighbors of all stripes, and like band together in terms of like we all had like a shared freezer that we would share food, and we'd all take care of each other's kids. Some kids, their parents were migrant fruit pickers, so we just took care of the kids, and so it was a shared thing. And I feel like, not only are we going to have to like support Canadian and like loosen up those interprovincial borders so that we can actually do business with each other. But I think in a microcosmic level, we have to take care of one another in our cities, in our neighborhoods, and our friends and our loved ones, and come together. And I think this movie is emblematic of that in the process and what it's trying to say. So if you ask me, I wasn't expecting you to say, what do you want to talk about? I was expecting to answer your questions. But that's the
well, you can't have someone like you on a show and not like you're a fascinating almost like piece of Canadian like indie arts, like from broadcasting, music, director, actor. Like again, much music for some of us. Much music was like our life. Like it's where we learned about any music. Both like big Canadian, like we're from like to Southern Ontario, a little town city called Cambridge. So like Toronto, when I was growing up, might as well have been New York City. And like you guys were broadcasting into our living rooms in these places and introducing us to like a world of music, but also a world of Canadian music that wasn't just like Stomp and Tom Connor, like rock and roll and punk rock and all this like great stuff. So
it's on the world stage now. The music of Canada is on the world stage, but it started in a humble and local way. And I mean, you're right. I'm kind of like, it's weird because I've lived and seen so many different junctures of development, creativity, and scenes in Canadian. I was a road dog with my band, saw many small Canadian cities and when I worked at CBC, went to the regions, went to all kinds of places, working at Much Music. The thing that you were part of, like it made me sad walking past Much Music the other day. It's the building sold and it's a shell of what it was. And we were commenting, Dylan and I, Dylan helped write the score of paying for it. We were just commenting on like, that was the vibe. That was the soul of the city. All the kids would like congregate on that corner. The doors would be open, the windows would be open, and we'd make stuff happen. And we weren't scripted. It was like this, we called it a living movie. And, that's a microcosm of culture and community brought forward by a lot of teenagers at the time and young people. And then broadcast right across Canada and all through the world, all through the States. So, many wonderful things happen when people come together. It's fun. So I hope that I feel like, with the gentrification of cities, it's just kind of like people have felt smaller and smaller. And I think it's now an opportunity for us to just feel a bit bigger and actually kind of meet each other out on the street.
And then Scott, I'll let you jump in, but the one on that point, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is like people talk about New York being super cool in the 70s and the early 80s, like because it was almost like a collapsing city financially, but like artists can come because rents are cheap and they can do experimental things because there's other interesting people there. And then when everything gets expensive, you just get a homogenous, 1% bourgeois society. I like, would you say that that's kind of happened in Toronto as well? Or
I mean, a lot of artists can't afford to live here and they've had to move further afield. And I'm grateful for the places and the artists that still are hanging on. Thank God. you know, because that's what makes place dynamic. But we have to also ask ourselves, what do we value? My friend is a mom who is a realtor, and she brought us up to look at, because we wanted to do some art stuff, and she brought us up to the top of the condos to look at, because we were doing some stuff up there for an art project, and I couldn't believe it. It was like very soulless up there. Those big condos, they're expensive. They were broken before they were sold. So like we went into the one place where it was like, it was so pathetic. It was like, welcome to your new home. And it was like this little gift bag, but it was like shitty stuff in it. And the air vents was already broken and like rattling. I'm like, they haven't even moved in here. You open the sliding doors and you hear white noise, like you go, and it just goes because it's so windy and loud up there. They don't talk to their friends, like things are poorly made. They're paid gazoodles for that. And I'm like, oh my God, nobody wants to live like that. But we've sold this bill of like, this is what you want. Like advertising has said, this is what you want, And so I think a lot of people do feel empty. Even like luckily I've worked at Much Music, so I could demystify celebrity. And I've hung out with celebrities and seen many lonely celebrities, kind of like surrounded by their entourage, but wishing to go alone to their bedroom to read a book because it's kind of a lonely world. But yet they're what everyone thinks is living the peak existence. And it's like, I think many people are hungry for something more. And so if our cities are built just to answer to, I don't know, developers who want to line their pockets with cash and not actually, they just like make the money and leave.
Yeah.
Some of these places are going to be terrible in 10 years and have to be rebuilt. And they know that. And it's like, they don't care. They got their money already. I've seen places like, I went to this one development meeting and they're like, don't worry, all the ugly stuff is going to be built further back. They literally said, and these places were like, oh my God, tiny little rooms. I'm like, does this even have a window? And they were hoping to sell for, international students. Tiny little hovel with no window. And I'm like, what? Wild. So, I mean, we got to get it together and we will, because that's, I lived in poverty for a great deal. I left home when I was 15, or it saved my life. And I grew up in poverty. I was eating like potatoes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, different styles. Still my favorite food. I love potato chips. But I know that, it's not the rich that help the poor. It's oftentimes the poor that help the poor.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're going to be getting all poor pretty soon.
Hey, at least we'll have community again, right? And solidarity, because when we're all poor, well, at least we're all in the same boat, right? So.
And there's a lot of baloney that has been like fed people when they see that they've had the wool pulled over their eyes. So it's a sobering moment. And then they'll have to like rebuild and kind of hopefully gain some knowledge and wisdom.
I think that's actually a good pivot point, because I think you have some questions just around the like sex worker aspect of this film.
Yeah. Like, did your perspective on sex work evolve during the filmmaking process? And what kind of conversations do you hope the film sparks among the audience?
Thanks for asking that. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge, the movie Paying for It is based on the graphic novel Paying for It by Chester Brown, who was is my best friend. I'm going to see him in a couple of hours. And we used to be romantic together. And it was me back in the day that suggested that we open up the relationship. And he, being a lover of freedom for himself and for everyone else, because if you want your freedom, you have to respect other people's freedom. And he was like, do you really want to? And I said, yeah, I do. I'd been developing crushes on people. Like when I was at Much Music, I was like, he's very introverted. And suddenly I was living a very extroverted lifestyle and meeting all kinds of new people. And anyway, that was a catalyst for him writing the book, because after being celibate for a couple of years, he decided to explore paying for sex. And basically his book is a memoir of what he experienced and saw. And he quickly observed the lack of labor rights so many sex workers have to abide, all sex workers have to abide by. They're considered sub-citizens. What they do is criminalized in Canada. And so it's very hard to do their work. It is labor. It's labor without any laws, no labor laws and so forth. And essentially his book was as a treatise for the decriminalization of consensual sex work. And in my mind, that was really profoundly interesting. I didn't really know a lot about it. And to tell you the truth, when he told me that he was seeing sex workers in our relationship, me being the one who even suggested opening up the relationship, I was like shocked. I tried to look cool. I tried to look like, hey, I'm hip. But really, I was like, oh my God, that seems so extreme.
And so the response that Sunny gives, was that basically your response in the film?
Yes. So, I was a young feminist, political. But then even when he said it, I was like, what? But I had to hide it because I had to look like I was cool. But inside I was freaking out. I was like jealous, the funny thing of being like, there I am dating people. And then yet when Chester does his deal, I'm jealous. So the hypocrisy of that, but I couldn't help it. I was jealous, but I didn't tell him. And I was afraid of losing him and all sorts of stuff. I wasn't sure what was going on. And to his credit, he took all the patience in the world to talk to me through. And because we could talk about things in our relationship, and the more I heard of what he had experienced and what he experienced in terms of the lack of rights for the sex workers made me, it was a big education. And I did have to outgrow my ignorance. And so, yeah, that was so many years ago. I mean, his book came out in 2011, and it took me a long time to get the adaptation right. Chester concealed the identities of the sex workers to protect their anonymity, because he didn't want that, because, it is a criminalized act. And so he wouldn't share any of the details of their lives. But I did know that for the movie, I wanted to explore the sex workers as full-bodied people, and bring them their characters and so forth. But that meant that I would have to interview sex workers, do my research, and also apply my imagination. And then I would pass a script to Chester to get his, make sure that those details were, correct. And then later on in the process, we brought on Andrea Warehun, and I passed the script by her to make sure that I passed the sniff test, and went that way. And so one of the key people that I spoke with was Valerie Scott. She's an amazing person, OG of sex work activism.
She's the one that went to the Supreme Court and is the dominatrix one?
Yes. I don't know if she's a dominatrix. She does her own stuff. I think one of the other sex workers was a dominatrix, but there were three of them altogether. Yes. And they went to the Supreme Court of Canada to strike down anti-prostitution laws, and they won provincially and nationally. And it was a real victory, but it was a short-lived victory. And it was ultimately an empty victory because the government at the time said, you win, but now we're enacting a new law. And that was a conservative government. We're going to criminalize clients. We're going to criminalize the Johns who pay for sex. So that's where it stands now. So I guess the parallel is it's like a bookseller. You can have a bookstore full of great books, interesting books, all kinds of subjects, but you're not allowed to buy a book or read a book. So, I mean, it still does not grant anyone any rights. It's still, it's difficult work. And, if things go off the rails, which they can, you can't call the police. And oftentimes when you do, the police will assail you. I heard stories about even like banks looking at people, what they're buying. And if they're buying too many condoms or lube, there's like, they bring you in for a meeting to see what you're buying. And if it's found that you're doing anything criminal like sex work, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to like even go to travel in the world. You're a second class, you're a sub citizen, you're a subhuman. And it's wrong. Labor rights, human rights, women's rights, all the rights. Chester draws a parallel between gay liberation and the struggles of consensual sex workers, and it follows the same trajectory. In the 90s, the police would raid bathhouses and arrest gay men. The same here, going in and arresting people working in, rub and tugs and so forth in brothels. And it's difficult, people, consensual sex workers who are being threatened to be expelled from the country, all sorts of difficulties. And so, here we have Belgium just last month. They are a very progressive country, and now they are fully decriminalized consensual sex work. Now they have rights, dental rights, child care rights. They can go on leaves of absence. They are worker rights. And that's an example of things progressing. And that's what we can aspire to. So,
well, and I think it's interesting that your film is kind of coming at the same time as Anora, which Andrea Warhun had worked on as well, or advised on as well.
Consultant, yeah.
Is that this conversation around sex work as work, which it obviously is now moving into the zeitgeist, and it's moving almost into the public discourse. And to be fair, we had a full service sex worker on our show when we were doing Anora, and I reached out to her after seeing your film, and I'm like, I said to her, I think that you will find paying for it the film that Anora could have been in some respects. And I know, I don't want to conflate you with Sean Baker or anything, but like, your film is like, yes, the sex workers in that they're people, they're going to work, they're doing their thing. They're a totally developed character, each one of them. Even
and they're not victimized. I try to say, you know what? There's nuance here. Not all consensual sex workers are victimized, nor are all clients vile. Nor do they all, so there's nuance here. And there's just a plethora of so many interesting perspectives. We're talking about there's just so many interesting perspectives. I am not a sex worker. I've done sex work adjacent work like Shortbus.
Yeah, I'm finding out that you were in Shortbus, which is like one of the premier films when it comes to like sex in films. And I was like, you were in that too? Wow, Jesus.
Yeah. And that was a community as well. We developed our characters through improvisation, and many of the stars in that movie were real life couples. It was really a groundbreaking movie. But trying to make that movie, the CBC, when I was working there, they threatened to not extend my contract if I would do the movie. And then all these great artists came to our defense, and then they backed down. And then the movie opened to a 20-minute standing ovation at Cannes, which is like the Olympics of movies. But to try to make that movie at that time, people did not understand. And it was, a groundbreaking queer film.
Do you think you could, I actually wondered, do you think you could make Shortbus today?
I mean, John said no. And I thought we could, the right person, maybe not, it would probably be non-union, but I don't know if we can now, because you need to have intimacy coordinators. When you throw an intimacy coordinator in there, which is really helpful for the actors to feel in Shortbus times, we were our own intimacy coordinators. We were with each other as friends and lovers for many years beforehand in the development. So it was handled with great care. These days, if you're going to put together a movie really quick, you don't have that time for relationships. And, and coming from the queer community, there's just a deep understanding and respect. John engenders deep respect from I see him treating everyone the same. There's no hierarchy on the set, and we share and we help one another. That's the kind of place it was. It was really beautiful. But if you're doing a kind of military operation movie, which is most movies, shot in 20 days, boom, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, if you're doing intimate stuff, you're going to want to have an intimacy coordinator there, and a good one. Not all of them are good. We keep hearing about intimacy coordinators, but we don't hear, just like a DP, there's shitty DPs and there's good DPs. You need a good intimacy coordinator, and they're we got to think about that. But when you throw that in the mix, it is more expensive, way more expensive.
Did you have one on paying for it?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And so actually, here's a good, what makes a good intimacy choreographer or coordinator, and how does a filmmaker go about finding a good one versus a not good one?
Yeah, I think the vibe is one, when you interview, I think the vibe is what the feeling you get from the person and hearing their ideas. I think somebody that's very probably emotionally observant and sensitive for everyone, um, who has a mind to bring what the movie needs and can think about, you know, the process, the director, the crew, the producers, but also the needs of the actors. And then dialing into the tone of the film. Because, you know, I could have an intimacy coordinator that their proclivity was like really juicy sex scenes. I was more interested in the kind of awkward, very raw, vulnerable, really human styles. So it wasn't like I needed big grinding, you know. So we need you need to choose somebody that's right for the tone, and also has a good touch with people. That's the thing. It's like, you know, we're in the shit together, and there's a lot of pressure. So you really need somebody who's just a decent person, good vibes, you know, that goes a long way. And so, yeah, so, but again, it's exponentially more expensive because like there were times where the actors, Leah Rose Sebastianis and Dan Byrne, this one very, like, I did a lot of long takes without cuts. So that meant the actors had to hit their marks and everything, the cinematography, all in line, gorgeous. And then right at cut, people pointing at monitor, you can see his flap. You got to do it again. I'm like, what his cover. And then after a while, I'm like, I'm digitally remove that. You know, they just gave me their guts. I'm not going to make them do it again.
Fix it in post.
Fix it in post. And then, you know, Dan Byrne was so great. He was a lover of the source material. He's a true artist. And he was like, Sook-Yin, I want to do this role so much. I identify with the character. I love the source material. I want to be part of the movie. I'm totally fine with full frontal. That's a brave guy. Mm-hmm. It was like full frontal happens on things like Euphoria, but full frontal is not really full frontal. It's those guys, they ask for perfect schlongs and they're fake. So you know,
yeah,
those appendages are, they made like a bit like, wow, but it's like this perfect one. I'm talking about a guy waking up, scratches his nuts and walks across the bedroom to pick a book off a shelf. Nothing. It's like what you are. And I just had a shower. It was like not that pretty, you know, like I'm there having a shower. Like I wanted that real feels because we're still so, yeah. Anyway, so Dan was like, I'm good to go, you know, and then so on his own, he was like, great. And then he was a great delicate sensitive scene partner with the people, with the other actors.
How did you pick Emily Lee? Because she had worked in like Race Boy Sleeps. Like how did you already
Emily,
know you wanted her? Or
I know I auditioned lots of people for the roles of Sonny and Chester. And I was specifically seeking out Asian actors. And I did my due diligence. I'm like, oh, who's this? I watched Rex Boy. I like, okay, she got a very small role, but I like, who's this person? I'm watching her in the scene. Like, it's pretty cool. Raul Trujillo as well. He was in a Denis Arcand or Denis Villeneuve movie. And he plays like a FBI dude. He's in there for very few minutes, but I'm like, who's that guy? This guy fucking blows everyone off the and then same with, I cast him as the lead in Octavio is Dead. And same with Emily. You know, I do my due diligence. I look for places, I look for people, and I saw her in that. I'm like, who's that kid? And so I asked her to audition. I reached out. And I like that there was only 3 people that really caught my attention. And it was obvious that she came from sort of an alternative culture background. And then when I saw the chemistry read between her and Dan, I was like, oh, I thank them there, because these 2 characters really kind of test each other. And they do weird, you know, they make some bonkers choices. But what they showed me was, despite the tension and difficulty, there was so much love between them and care. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm looking for. Because like so many people who auditioned for Dan, the same lines made him look like a big jerkoid. You know, and then with Emily, there were a lot of people that I didn't feel were that they looked beautiful, but it felt like maybe a little too mainstream.
So is it hard to, because she's playing you, right? Yeah. So as a director, was it challenging at points to have her like what is your, how do you direct your actors? Are you one of these directors that is very specific how you want the actor to be, or more like David Lynch that's just like just interpret the script? Like, what was your yeah?
Yeah, no, I just know when it feels right. So I lean on my musician. So I'm a musician first, and when I sing from my heart, I know there's a resonant frequency, and I don't always sing from my heart. So when I'm off, it doesn't go. And so I apply that when I'm watching a take, and when it hits my heart, when I feel it's right, and it's like this inexplicable thing, it's like a feeling, but it's always is correct. So with Emily, yeah, I mean, there was enough years between the events that occurred and me now that I could sort of have detachment and objectively look, take aspects of my life, fictionalize them. She's a work of autofiction. Her name isn't Sook-Yin, but Sunny. And I knew how to sort of use those things as building blocks for a story. And it was very handy, like making a movie out of something that I experienced. Cause like, if anyone had a question, I could either send them a photo from real life, oh, well, this is the box, or, oh, this is the thing, or this is oh, here's the dress that I wore. Emily, do you want to wear it? Yeah. So she's wearing some of my wardrobe. The great thing about Emily Lay is that she's like an athlete. She's really a keener. And sometimes, I mean, she was not around during Much Music when I was there. And, I realized I had given her an entire graph at Much Music that were proper nouns, Thrush Hermit, Halifax Pop Explosion. Like none of it made sense to her. So I had to like sit back and like tell her what each thing meant. And then she could kind of understand it. And yeah, Emily was a person who, to her credit, would be hungry to know more. She wanted to get it right. And I would sometimes do multiple takes with her. And she'd be like, I can get it better. I can get it better. I can get it. And then boom, you got it. You got it. And she also is wonderful because she's like way more chill. She's like more chill than me. I think I'm much more like animated, kind of hot-headed. So she acted that part. She was also really cool with not looking flawed. A lot of actors that want the best side, want to always look good. She was fine with being less than perfect. She understood that's a character, and she's also got her emotions are very, very close to the surface. So for many of the dramatic scenes, she could just like the waterworks would come out. And so it was like, wow, that's astonishing. Sometimes I'd have to say, okay, now hold back from crying. So everybody is different. Yeah, everyone's different, when you're directing them. But I know what I want and I know what I want to see. And I'm surprised and delighted when somebody brings something that's like, I never thought of that and elevates the scene.
Are you happy with like how the film's performing? On my notes, it says that it's opening tonight in Toronto at Scotiabank, at the Cineplex in Scotiabank. But it was also at TIFF. And did it play TIFF Lightbox as well?
Yeah, it got chosen as one of the top 10 Canadian films. And I've never been on that list, and I'm just so thrilled. And so there's going to be a screen. I think the screening sold out later in February. But it is opening at the Scotiabank Theater today, and it has a 1-week run. So I'm hoping that people will tell all their friends. I think it's really something that people have to see right now to buoy their spirits and look at the possibilities and discover wiggle room in their lives. And then also it ends up, playing. It's a very busy schedule I have. I go from the top 10 screening in Toronto. I go up to Whitehorse. I go up to Victoria, Vancouver. I come back here for a gig with Slut Code. That's Jamie Whitecrow, who plays Angelina, and her band, a punk band. We're playing February 20th.
Where are you guys playing?
Handlebar.
Okay.
And then Dylan and I are playing. We released the soundtrack of the Paying For It film, and we're playing tomorrow night at Expo at 1978 Dundas West with a bunch of great bands. And we have CDs of the soundtrack there, like hard copy of limited.
Is all this stuff on your socials? Like I just started following you on Instagram. So
yeah,
if you're playing gigs, I'll come check out your gigs.
And then I come back and then I play Ottawa, bring the movie to Ottawa, Winnipeg, And then all these other towns are wanting more. So like all of it's there. Like Angie can give you the whole rundown, but yeah. And then people are like, when is it coming to the United States? And we did get an American distributor. So I'm looking forward to bringing this to the States too.
Do you have anything lined up for streaming services yet that you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
disclose?
yeah. It's going to be on Crave and CBC Gem in
Amazing.
Canada.
Before we let you go, just because I feel like I honestly I could just talk to you for the next 3 hours, and I know we all
Really,
got other stuff to go to do.
Oh,
I,
it's
I
going to
could
be
just
St. Catharines too. I want to
Um,
hit so many places. Oh yeah, and also Kingston.
perfect.
Scott, do you have anything else for her before we let her go?
Really? Like, I've just been sitting here quiet. No, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this with us, but also um, thank you for making like my adolescence like awesome, because it it was amazing. And like that's the thing. Like I know you were saying before that you working at Much Music, you're celebrity desensitized, but I think me and Chris can say like you're like a celebrity to us, and
Ah,
this is amazing.
thank you. Well, I was a very misfit kid, and I suddenly got the job on Much Music, and I never. I mean, I am just so humbled and grateful that people were receiving the messages because they were kind of like SOSs in the bottle, like, "Hey, check out this band," and here I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm here, and so many people, like fellow weirdos, and also, queer kids, kids, kids of color. Like it was meaningful to see. I didn't think about it back then. I'm just like out there doing my thing, and then it was like people were like, it was meaningful to see somebody kind of like us, And so I think that's a beauty of that place, that there was a kind of like relationship, through the media, which is pretty awesome. Well, so thank you guys for being there, and also for telling people about this little movie.
So, would you be cool if we suggested to people that they should double feature this thing with Honora? And if so, which order do you think they should watch those two films?
Oh God, I don't know if
No.
that would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
That's a lot of viewing. That's like 3 hours. But I would say there are at least 4 actors who are in play sex workers in Paying for It that are great filmmakers on their own right. And Leah Rose Sebastianis, Jamie Whitecrow, um, uh, 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 um, Becca Willow Moss, Andrea Werhan, Kitoko May. They all have great films. And I'm pushing my producers to do some screenings, hopefully with some of their films, short films. It's a little bit more, because they're not long full features, it's a little bit more easier to sort of
Program them?
Yeah. To feel like, double bills a pretty long time. But yeah, I think that would be awesome. I would also love, like, John Waters is a kindred spirit. His movies can be pretty short. That'd be pretty fun.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying, yeah, pick what John Waters, again, I'm trying to wrap this up, but I'm also like, I keep asking you, what John Waters film?
I love Female Trouble. Female Trouble's pretty fun.
Yeah. So you'd like that with Paying for It?
Yeah. Or even like Shortbus and Paying for It. John Cameron Mitchell is our executive producer.
Well, and he also did Herdwick and the Angry Itch, right?
Yeah.
And which you were also in. What other of your films, just before we do let you go, is this your sixth feature or fifth feature?
Well, I've done 3 legit features, like Year of the Carnivore. I discovered Kristen Milioti, who blew up with The Penguin.
Okay.
And Octavio is Dead was my second, and this is my third. But with Dylan and I, who's hiding in the kitchen, he and I during the lockdown made 2 very personal feature films, Death and Sickness and Rest and Relax, that are bonkers. And also bonkers is that CBC Gem were needed COVID content, so they license Death and Sickness, which is like a wild, surreal, psychic melodrama of that time. So it's on CBC Gem. So those are very wild and wonderful features. So yeah, technically I've done 5.
And are the ones
Really
that are on not on CBC, are they available on any streaming services like Octavio's Dead and Rest and Relax and stuff?
Octavio is Dead is Year of the Carnivore is available, both of them online through Google and stuff like that. Death and Sickness on my website. And then we only bring Rest and Relax in front of micro cinemas. And oftentimes we'll play a show as well.
Oh, cool.
Like,
Nice.
Do karaoke and stuff. So it's like a full meal weirdo deal. And that we've brought to Montreal and here to tiny little screenings. You got to be there in person to see it. But we were thinking maybe next year we'll make it available.
Or do more of that just in Toronto. Like, that'd be so cool to see.
Yeah, there's this whole micro cinema circuit. Like Leah Rose Sebastianis, who plays Kitty, is a superstar in the micro cinema world, which is like a huge, interesting subculture. Like Pee Pee Poo Poo Man, that movie?
Yeah.
Dime that keeps packing houses everywhere, super DIY style. That whole world. There's a whole other underground world that is not part of Cineplex, that is like weird eyesore cinema, or like, Market Video, where we shot a bunch of scenes. Daniel Vila's place. These are micro cinema places that are like people love. That.
So is a micro cinema different than a repertory cinema, like the Review?
Yeah, I mean it's the Review will tap into those worlds, but micro cinemas even they're just like wild movies that people handmade movies. They're very interesting and audacious, that break all the rules and are funny and wild, and then some of the curators will just like have a night where they're screening all of David Lynch's TV shows, cinephiles who love things, that find very weird things to share with people.
Yeah, you know what?
So,
Thank you. Yeah,
leading edge movies, Market Video, the Pee Pee Poo Poo Man. Go check out, Leah Rose Sebastianis. She's Top Secret Bad Boy on Instagram. That's some really exciting stuff there. And Paying For It is related too. We're kind of like, definitely related to them as well.
Well, again, thank you for, honestly, we always thought you were cool. It's great to find out you're actually even cooler in real life. So,
all right, guys. Well, I hope you can visit Toronto and check out some of the really cool cinema stuff happening here.
Absolutely. And good luck on your film tour. And we're going to check out more of your stuff, and we'll try and get our audience at least checking out your content and all the people that worked on your film. Actually, Gail, you worked on a friend of mine's short film, so I already know her as a fantastic cinematographer. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, all you need is to look at the credits and take a little moment to examine each person, and they're phenomenal and fascinating. Every person on the team. Amazing. And we're talking like a lot of people that weren't given a chance at the table, because some people had never done, undertaken a feature key department. And I had worked with them on tiny little movies. I did A Fermenting Woman, that's a horror film, and met Olivia de Oliveira, who saved the day. And she hadn't been a creative key on a feature before, but I'm like, let's do it. And they were amazing. So a lot of people on the team who really shine.
Well, again, thank you again, and good luck with your film, and that the film is paying for it. So
thank you so much, guys. Bye.
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 And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.